Why do estate agents get the valuation of land so wrong? And what can you do as an alternative to find a viable development site that makes sense and allows you to make a profit out of the development as a ground up property developer? So that's what we're going to explore in this video. So first of all, let's deal with the issue of why they get the valuation so wrong. So the first thing is to understand who estate agents are. Estate agents are primarily the seller of houses, and they've got a lot of experience in that, and they're able to put valuations because of the volume of houses that they're dealing with. And so therefore, even if they have a house that's not particularly the same as other ones that they've sold, they're able to put a best guess estimate on what that would sell for based on the volume of sales that they go through, and using other tables such as recently sold values, current asking prices. So they're able to scan the market and understand where that value lies, and it's native to the experience that they have. When it comes to land, they tend to not handle very many transactions, and it's been my experience that they're not almost that interested in land valuation, or sorry, land sales, because it doesn't have something to show off. I mean, a piece of land is not particularly sexy, whereas a house with a smart bathroom and a luxurious kitchen has got some features there that they can really get stuck into. Or in fact, if it's a dilapidated house, they can promote the fact that you can do this up and make a significant profit in the process. Question whether that's really the case, but nevertheless, that's the way it's going to be positioned. Whereas with land, it's just a piece of land, and it just has no real sparkle to it from their point of view. But the real critical thing is that they get the valuation wrong, because what they do is that they take the knowledge that they have from valuing houses and apply that to land valuation. Now, instinctively, that might seem a reasonable thing to do, but it isn't, because land is very, very different from valuing a house. So when they take a house, they take the square meterage of the house, because what you can generally find is that a similar square meterage, or a pounds per square meter or pounds per square foot, will come out roughly the same within a given area. So a given area, let's say they have 150 square meter houses and they're valuing a house at 100 square meters, then if they simply take a division of the value of that house at 150 square meters, divide it by 150, multiply it by 100, generally that's going to be the valuation of that 100 square meter house. Of course, you do need to compare like with like, so you can't compare flats with houses, semi-detached houses, terraced houses. So they'll all have their uniqueness in terms of valuation. So a pounds per square meter like for like would make sense. With land, it's very much not the case of that. You can't do a pounds per square meter. What you actually have to do is construct a complete valuation model. So typically when they move over to looking at land valuation, what they do is they say, okay, here's a piece of land. What did something recently sell? And often it's not in the immediate area, so they're going further afield to find valuations, and they're finding what something sold for. So a single plot that was sold to a self-builder who got excited about or frustrated, perhaps often is more often the case, about trying to find this development site so they can build their dream home, falls in love with a particular piece of land, buys it, pays over the odds, which is okay, because that's where they want to live, and that's the most important thing, is having somewhere that you're quite happy to spend the next 10, 20, 30 years or whatever period of time that you are going to stay there. So the cost in itself actually over a period of time amortizes. In other words, if you paid a little bit more now, in 30 years time, the whole valuation will gone up. So, you'll still do okay. But as a developer, you can't operate in that way, because you need to be dealing with the immediate market, not what the market will be in 10, 20, 30 years time. So it's okay that a self-builder pays over the odds for a particular site, if that's the site that they really want. As a developer, you can't do that because it would wipe out your profit. So you need to take a different approach. And it's here that the estate agent falls down because they don't know how to establish the true value of a site. The equation is fairly simple. You take the end valuation, so the thing that the estate agents are quite natively doing, in other words, they put a valuation on a completed house. The problem is that they have no idea what that completed house is going to look like. So as a developer, you've got to have an understanding of what you can put on that site, and that's understanding lots of other aspects of that. And that's why we do recommend that you actually take some formal training as opposed to just trying to learn off the YouTube videos. I mean, we've got over 400 on this site, and you can certainly learn an awful lot of information, but let's be honest, you're not going to be able to know everything from this because we don't share the best stuff, in all honesty. Just while I'm saying that, if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you subscribe, because there is certainly a lot of content here. But when you're ready to take the next step, then I suggest that you do contact us and we can help you on your property development journey. Anyway, what I'm really essentially saying is that you need to really understand what are you going to put onto that site. So therefore then, once you know what you're going to put onto that site, you've got to put a valuation on that. So whether that's 1 house, 10 houses, or whatever number of combination of houses it is, you understand what that total value of that site is going to be once it's completed. Second, you take off your profit, and you take off that next, because you've got to make sure that you make your profit. So rather than like a lot of people who run self-employed businesses, they charge a fee to the customer and then they got their expenses, and what's ever left is what they earn. A very bad way, incidentally, to run a business, because they should be actually having the fee that they charge, in other words, what they charge the customer, then they should be taking off their salary, then the expenses, and then there should be some surplus profit, which is their reward for taking the risk on operating it as their own business. So you take your profit off. We would recommend is a build profit 25% of gross development value. In other words, that valuation that the property is going to be worth once it's finished. We also, the way we suggest that you do it, that you make a land valuation profit, but I'll talk about that in a moment. And then next, what you're going to take off is your costs. We split this into 2 different areas. We talk about build costs. So that's the actual physical structure of the building that you're going to put on there, from the foundations to completing the building. And then we have development costs, where the costs that are associated to the site but not necessarily attributable to each house. So for instance, you have planning fees, you'll have planning drawings that need to be drawn up, you'll have building control regulations that need to satisfy, there'll be purchasing fees from solicitors, there'll be various surveys that you need to get done. So they will be attributable to the site, and obviously a proportion will be attributable to each house, but it makes it much clearer when you're able to break those two into 2 different costs. And once you've got those, so you've got your what the price is going to sell for, you're taking off your profit, you're taking off all your costs, your development and your build costs, and that tells you what the land is worth. And in that way, you ensure that you're getting your build profit of 25% of gross development value. And what you will invariably find is that most sites that are on the market are never going to work out, because that equation has not been carried out. And it takes a bit of time to work that out. That's the other thing that I would say. So it's not as simple as looking for comparables. That's only one step in the process. You've got to really establish, first of all, what we do is we do a desktop appraisal. So we have a program that allows us to do a desktop appraisal, and you'll seen a bit of a glimpse of that last week's video when I talked about the build cost model, because one of the areas that most people struggle with is establishing what the build costs are in your area. In other words, there is no national build cost. It is area by area, because the material prices will vary, the labor rates will vary, the plant hire will vary. So you need to establish what the build costs are in the area that you are actually in. And so once you've got that, we can do then quickly a desktop appraisal and say, does it pass that? In other words, do we at least get 25% of our gross development value? If we do, then it's worth investigating further. And then we go through a much more exhaustive process. We have a list of items. I think it's 57, 62. I'm not quite sure exactly what the number of items are that we then check, because each of those items could have further cost implications. Again, something that the estate agent is never going to check. In fact, won't be even necessarily aware that these things exist. Incidentally, if you'd like that checklist, then I'll put a link in the description and a link up above so that you can actually access that. We have that checklist available to you. However, what I would say to you as a word of caution is that you need to understand the whole thinking behind that checklist. So anyway, you can get a hold of that plot checklist, as we call it. And then what we then need to do is, because if it passes that, then we go on to the third stage, which is a little bit further investigation, and we might start to bring in some professionals, because we're really getting to the stage where this has become a serious prospect. And how do we find that land? Because as I said before, generally that's not going to be on the market, so we need to find that off market. We'll get back to the video in just a moment. If you're really serious about creating a property development business, then I would suggest that the next logical step for you would be to get a copy of my book, You a Property Developer. Simply go to the website of the same name, youapropertydeveloper.com. I'm going to cover the cost of the book. All I'm going to ask is that you contribute to the cost of the postage and packaging. Head over to youapropertydeveloper.com and pick up a copy now. And so that off-market land is going to be, we're going to be able to establish by looking at maps, looking for infill sites, looking for areas. We have another strategy we call boots on the ground, which is about being able to identify sites. And it's not what most people think. It's not like this big open space that is fairly obvious that it could be potentially be a plot. It's things that are like dilapidated garages. It could be that something else is on the site, and again, that can have dangers in itself. So for instance, you might find a disused petrol station that's been closed for 10, 15, 20 years and think, okay, there's an opportunity, I could clear that site, but that comes with its own set of problems. So you do need to know what you're doing with a particular site if that's going to make a viable proposition, and that comes from experience or from the training that we certainly provide. And then when you do actually find that site, you're then going to take it through the planning process. You obviously need to secure it legally in order that the current landowner doesn't walk away with the planning permission, which you are going to seek to get. And once you've got the planning permission, what you've done effectively is increase the value of that site because it has had a very low value at that time, and you've increased it because with planning, of course, it uplifts the value because it now becomes a much more viable asset. And again, one of the things that you'll often find estate agents will post is land, and they will lock in the potential value of that site, and you should never be paying for potential value in a site. It should be only what the site is worth today. So typically in the UK, you're talking about between £5 and £15 an acre for land that has no planning permission in it. In other words, raw agricultural land, which you're unlikely to get planning permission for, but nevertheless, at its very lowest level, that's what valuation of land. Gaining planning permission can sometimes increase the value by up to 100 and sometimes even more than that. So you should never be paying for that potential, but because the landowner has got now a much more valuable asset due to your due diligence and expertise, then it's only right that you should share in that additional value, and so therefore that value you should be sharing with the landowner, and that's where we build in what we call a land uplift profit. Now obviously I've just really skimmed over that, but that's basically the essential idea. So very more often than not, you're going to have to search for off-market land in order to find viable opportunities, and understanding that even if you do find something that is listed with an estate agent, that you are going to have to go into a negotiation, because invariably it's going to be way overpriced, and then the question is whether you can actually buy it for the right amount of money. And when I say buy it, you don't want to be buying it without permission, and so you have to put it into a legal structure that allows you to buy that, or at least secure that land while you gain the permissions in order to make it that more viable asset. In other words, land with planning permission. So I hope you found that useful. As I said before, if you're new to the channel, or I didn't actually say new to the channel, but if you have a look around the channel, there's lots of content here. As I say, there's well over 400 videos now. And please subscribe and join us. Visit our website at builditandprosper.com to find out how you perhaps continue your journey with us. We're here to help you. We're not into high pressured sales or anything like that. We want to make sure, and this is the reason why you can't actually buy anything that we have in terms of training off our website, is because we want to make sure you and I are a good fit for each other in order, because you're going to invest some money if you take that route with us and continue your property journey. Wish you all the very best, and I look forward to speaking to you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.